All right, it's 11:30. I'd like to call this February 6th meeting of the MPO Executive Committee to order. I assume we have quorum. Thank you, everyone. Our first item to vote is approval of the agenda.
Second.
Moved by Des Moines, seconded by Altoona. Any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. The agenda is approved. Up next, we have a vote on the approval of the January meeting minutes.
Second.
Moved by Polk City, seconded by Altoona. Any corrections or comments related to the minutes?
I was here. Online, at least.
That's when I made fun of you. Something. I don't remember what it was. All background. I had a Shelby joke. Can't remember what it was. I remember it was funny to me.
All right, we'll know that Shelby was here the last time. Make that a modification. Any other discussion on the meeting minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. Up next, report and discuss. We have our first thing is the MPO officers. Turn this over to Gunner.
Thank you. Good morning. The nominating committee of Mayor O'Connor, Councilman Gatto, and Amanda Wonka with Dart put forward a slate of officers, continuing the current slate of officers with Holm as chair, Walters as vice chair, and Boson as secretary and treasurer. And this is not a voting item for you today. This will go to policy next week or later this month. But you have the option to make different nominations at this time. This is before you for discussion.
Joe and I did turn down the bribe from Jeff to try to take over Mark's spot. I just want Actually, Mark threw money into it too. Yeah. Honest guy over there said nope. He said no.
All right. Anyone?
You're stuck.
All right.
Sorry, Donnie. Great to yourself.
I can
I got a 4-year now.
Yeah.
Moving on, we have a comprehensive safety action plan update. Marcus.
Thank you. As you all know, we've been working on the comprehensive safety action plan for a number of months. We are nearing the completion of that. We have draft documents prepared and going through review by the Transportation Technical Committee. Today we have tools consultants online kind of walk through the components of that plan for you. So I'll turn it over to them.
Folks, my name is Sean Murphy Lopez. I was here at your last meeting giving an overview of the outline of the plan. And while I just joined and missed what Marcus said, I'm sure he mentioned that you've had the plan, and I'm going to give an overview of that today. So on the next slide, this is the cover sheet and the acknowledgements. I'll just note that this is all in Word right now. It hasn't been transferred into a nice graphically pleasing document, but we will be doing that. If you go to the next slide, the plan contents, this is very similar to the outline I shared last month, but just to make it clear, this is how the plan is organized. We have 8 chapters, and I'll give some highlights from those, as well as 7 appendices, and several of the chapters, not all of them, but several of them are summaries of the appendices. So, if you look at this plan and anything seems a little short in one of the chapters, just know that there are references in that chapter to go to appendices that provide a lot of supporting information. So if you go to the next slide, I'm just going to give a few high-level pieces from the plan. Chapter 3, which is the first meaty chapter, and it's based on Appendix A. These are the key findings from the crash analysis. We have a map on the right-hand side that shows the high injury network for all modes throughout the MPO area, and then the key findings on the left. Bigger roads, that's where fatalities and serious injury crashes are occurring. Men and young adults more likely to be fatally or severely injured than women and older adults and children. The fatal and severe crashes are more likely to occur in rural areas as a percentage or a probability of crashes in urban versus rural areas. Motorcyclists, pedestrians, bicyclists, those travelers are more vulnerable in crashes than people using motor vehicles. And then speeding and failing to yield are the 2 biggest causes of fatal and severe crashes. the next chapter is chapter 4, and this covers the community engagement key findings. There's also a detailed 30-ish page report, which is Appendix B. It shows a lot of charts and information about how we came up with these key findings. The public perceives that people driving unsafely, that's the biggest contributor to safety issues. We heard a lot about a need for more bicyclist and pedestrian infrastructure. We heard that pavement markings, signs, and signals are an area for improvement as far as their visibility and consistency. And conversations with our first responders and law enforcement officials highlighted the need to improve roadway behavior as well. Chapter 5 covers the countermeasures. There are both infrastructure and non-infrastructure countermeasures in Chapter 5, and then those are detailed in Appendix E. Chapter 5 really just includes some charts summarizing all the countermeasures. Appendix E has roughly 1 to 2 page descriptions of each countermeasure. Chapter 5 also includes project priorities. So there's a map of project priorities for the whole MPO area on the left here. And then in Appendix F, each community has their own individual map with project numbers. We heard some feedback from TTC members about, and this is on the next slide, about what could we do to improve Appendix F. So over the next month, we are going to be working with communities and with staff at the MPO to make sure that their concerns are addressed. We've got 4 overarching concerns here. I won't go through each of them, but just know that we're going to be working on those in detail, and we're happy to answer any questions about those, or I can go through that in more detail if you all would like. And then the next slide shows Chapter 8, and this is the chapter discussing progress and transparency. And we have 2 charts in this chapter, one for fatalities and one for severe injuries. There are about 35 fatalities on average currently. This shows how we would get to 0 by 2045. And then there's also a similar one for severe injuries, and there are about 175 of those on average currently. So the next slide, this talks about options for plan adoption. I might hand this back to Marcus, since you might want to give a summary of what TTC discussed.
Yep, so this morning we met with the Transportation Technical Committee to discuss the draft plan and potential adoption of that. We laid out 3 options: adopt the entire plan with recommended edits that they've provided, adopt the entire plan with those recommended edits, except for the appendix that still needs some work related to local projects. And then the third option was to adopt the plan in March after all those edits had been changed. After communication and conversation about the edits still needed to those that appendix F, which is the bulk of what the communities are actually going to benefit from, the decision was made to push this item to the March meeting and approve the entire plan all at once. So there's no action for you today. TTC will take this up in March for approval. The goal, again, of getting the plan adopted is so that we're prepped and ready for the Safe Streets and Roads for All NOFO funding opportunity that we're anticipating to still come out sometime in March. So
one wrinkle that we'll need to figure out how to navigate is that the policy committee typically does not meet in March. And so I think at your discretion, you could either delegate to exec to adopt it in March as policy, or finalize it in April. And I think there's a viable path in terms of being the terms of the grant application either way, but just know that's something we have to figure out.
Could we do a quick Zoom call in March?
A third option would be a special meeting.
So, yeah, I think with the feelings of policy thing, that makes all the decisions probably the best.
Right. Yeah, this is pretty heavy lift, and I think maybe perhaps just a singular item to vote on for policy board. We could call a special meeting in March, cognizant of spring break, and most people won't be around.
Try to work around that
Yeah.
schedule.
That's really good direction. We'll proceed accordingly. Thank you.
Are there any other questions on the plan development and or anything along those lines?
Thank you. All right, regional applications and safe streets for all markets.
Thank you. So as I mentioned, we're working towards a potential NOFO coming out in March. So the next phase of project development will be getting prepared for what projects will be included in that. So Tool is going to give a brief overview of kind of the process that we're looking at moving forward in the next month or so.
The question is, how much is Connie and Joe gonna leave the rest of this?
Not sure.
Okay, you just let us know.
I will.
We will, we'll be very kind, based on need, I think.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Dean Chamberlain with Tool Design. I'm a senior engineer and engineering group manager for our Minneapolis office, and really helping out with the project selection and prioritization and grant application stuff for this project. Just want to give a brief overview of what we're looking at for the grant application. From the TTC meeting, we had a workshop with TTC in December. Direction was kind of given through that workshop that we are going to be focusing for this grant application on some smaller spot treatments of safety countermeasures spread across the region, plus a few key corridor intersection reconstruction or modification projects. This really aligns with the city of Des Moines' successful SS4A grant application following the conversation as well, or kind of through the conversation at the December TTC, we also kind of have identified a theme of safe access to schools as kind of being a focus for these smaller spot treatments of safety countermeasures. And so we've identified some locations for those potential improvements. You can see on the map, you don't have to squint too hard. We'll be in touch with all these communities in regards to these project locations and what these will entail. But like I said, they're focused on safe access to schools, whether that's pedestrian crossings, signal operations nearby school intersections, could be like filling in a sidewalk gap or a shared use path, that kind of thing leading up to a school. I didn't put this on here, but we will also be including some region-wide ideas such as retroreflective signal backplates, and obviously that would be on every signal in the region. So I didn't want to put this on the map because that would be a little too much, but just know that that's also in the background here as well. We'll also likely, as we have these conversations with the communities, we'll be narrowing down this list, and certainly the different countermeasures that would be selected for each of these projects through those conversations coming up. Go ahead to the next slide. Second portion of the grant application focus would be those key corridors and intersection reconstructions that we'd be looking at. We gave the TTC a kind of a to do here for each community submit a few projects within their community, which they did. So you can see those kind of blue and green highlighted areas on this map here. We also did an activity with TTC to see which of these projects that the community selected that the TTC members would feel are most important to be addressed sooner than later. The top 5 I've listed on here. There's a couple of them though that are either funded separately through a separate study, like Highway 141 in Grimes, or there's a project that Iowa DOT is doing in Ankeny on US 69. So we may omit those and focus on some other of the top key corridors that were identified. We are also kind of utilizing these conversations with the communities to identify, exactly what our costs are going to be for those spot treatments, so that we know how many of these corridors that the communities have identified that we'd be able to incorporate into the grant application as well. So kind of thinking a handful of these corridors at this point, but we'll be refining that as time goes on the next couple months here. Next slide, please. So some next steps with the grant application. Sean will be talking in a second about soliciting input from the public on these preferred projects. That will be coming up soon. We'll also be, like I mentioned, seeking input from those communities and agency partners about the preferred project scopes. and focusing around countermeasures that we've identified in Chapter 5 and Appendix E, if you've had a chance to look at that. Also be generating strategies based on the forthcoming notice of funding opportunity or NOFO. There's a lot of question marks floating around about what that's going to entail, so we'll be keeping the MPO staff apprised of what we've learned as time goes on here. And certainly once it comes out, we're still anticipating it coming out in March, but that may be delayed depending on what happens with the federal government. We're not exactly sure. But we'll also be utilizing input received from the TTC, especially in the December meeting, but then also subsequently, as well as the public input as well, and then returning to TTC and also exec committee with those recommendations. I believe it's scheduled for the April meeting. And then I think Sean's going to wrap up here by talking about the upcoming open house and engagement.
And so we will be, along with MPO staff, hosting an open house this coming Monday, the 10th, from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. at their offices, or I guess the offices where you're at right now. The presentation, we'll give a presentation. It will take place at 4:30. We'll record it in case people can't come, and it will be posted on the MPO website. We'll encourage people to attend in person and remotely, so folks can definitely come that way. We're going to have a public engagement survey at the open house that people who attend in person will be able to take, but we're also going to create an online survey that will mimic what's happening at the open house online. So anyone attending remotely or anyone for the next month can take this survey through March 16th. We're going to ask for two main pieces of input. One, where are people's preferred projects? And we're going to use that map that Dean was showing of all of the projects submitted by the community. We've heard from the TTC about their opinions on which projects should happen. We want to hear from the public as well. And then we also are going to ask about the public's level of support for the different types of countermeasures. And we have about 25 or 30 countermeasures. I've just taken a screenshot showing an example of a countermeasure that's intended to prevent roadway departures in rural areas, which is wider edge lines. But there'll be many others, such as roundabouts, bike lanes, what Dean was talking about, retroreflective backplates. So we're looking forward to getting feedback about that and hope that folks can help spread the word on that.
So with that, if there are any questions on how the grant will be developed, grant application will be developed, we'll have to take those next time.
Hear me. Thank you. Moving on, legislative update DC list. Got it.
I think the understatement of the day is that there's been a lot happening on legislative front. We'll walk through several of those things. I do also want to acknowledge Tony Chavez from Nun's office is here with us. He was here for tech as well, brought a lot of value to that conversation. So we'll invite him to speak at the end of this. I'll walk through some of the slides that we've prepared here. First, I want to go into a couple of state updates. A couple things that we're watching. One is related to Future 435. This is hopefully not unfamiliar to you all at this point. We anticipate bills being introduced in the House, followed by a companion bill in the Senate. I would anticipate those within the week. It's going to do a few things, two of which are familiar to you all. One, provide a minimum speed exemption. That's part of the DOT's 4-point plan for us. The other is an appropriation of $250,000 to this analysis. And the third, which is new but not really a surprise or a change from the overall course, is to provide a guarantee that the federal weight exemption will occur prior to interstate designation. That's a federal issue, not a state issue, but there was just a lot of the egg stakeholders we're working with want assurances that that step was going to occur. So that's what you are going to see. The important thing on this that I want you to take away is we're going to be putting on a call when there are committee meetings, and it'll be very important that we have elected officials showing up, being in the room for those committee meetings, demonstrating how important this was. We did have a very productive meeting with Senate President Amy Sinclair, and we had some representatives from Warren County and Norwalk. It was our new policy rep, Supervisor Cook, who helped set that up. So he brought folks from Norwalk. And that was really impactful to help. So we'll continue to use that playbook on future meetings. But just want to let you know, be prepared. Yes.
Do you feel like you got a little better momentum this time around than you thought?
It feels like you've got a lot more paper in the back.
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising. A lot of bills take a couple of years, and I think we had positive momentum last year. We got farther than we really anticipated. This year, it's feeling like there's more momentum. We have a sponsor on the Senate side. We're building Senate champions. And I think there's the concerns that were raised last year, in which we're prepared to address some revisions, are being incorporated into the bill being introduced. So I know Ryan Moon with the partnership had a conversation with the Farm Bureau yesterday. There's more feeling of comfort, I think. I don't think we're gonna have, roaring support from ag stakeholders. But last year, Farm Bureau was in a neutral position. They weren't opposed. And if we could have them to be in a not opposed camp, that would be a really positive situation.
Thanks for that.
Next slide, please. The other state issue, this came up at Tech. It sounds like Representative Woolsey has a bill in there to try to address the Supreme Court ruling, shifting liability to cities related to sidewalk maintenance. We looked up the bill real quickly between meetings and put up language here. We asked TTC if it would be helpful to have the MPO at those committee meetings to voice support on behalf of the committee. So I would raise that here. If you thought that would be worth having the MPO voicing opinions at those meetings, we can involve ourselves at those. I'm getting head nods. I'm going to take those.
Concerned with our heights.
Any chance I get to use that joke, I do. Sorry, Joseph Jones isn't here.
I'm going to take that as a yes. We'll proceed accordingly. Next list. We're going to the easiest to the hardest here. This one is about this time of year. We're starting to collect projects as part of our development of an annual DC list. There was a handout at the table. Some of you have grabbed it. That shows last year's list. We typically use that as a starting point for the next year. So we're going to be reaching out to your technical committee reps and asking them to provide updates to that list. I think that's all we needed to cover at this point. Just to let you know that process is underway. Next slide. Now we get to the fun stuff. On the 20th of January, and you all got an email late in the evening from Dylan on this, the Trump administration released an executive order titled Unleashing American Energy. It targeted components of the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act that were priorities of the previous administration. And there was cause for concern, however, because a strict reading of that executive order suggested that all programs could be frozen. And so there's a lot of late night Zoom calls about that. Subsequently, the Office of Management and Budget released a memo clarifying the executive order, the pause only applied to the quote Green New Deal elements, i.e. programs related to climate change, electric vehicles, DEI, et cetera. And subsequently on the 29th, OMB rescinded that memo. Next slide, please. Housekeeping item, we did check, we've been in communication with DOT, and to their credit, they've been very proactive with communication to MPOs. Our reimbursements for planning funds are just continuing as normal. That has not been interrupted. They reaffirmed that recently as yesterday, saying that they've gotten confirmation from FHWA that that's can continue. So we're not anticipating any disruptions there. Just get that. Next slide. Also released last month was an order from USDOT titled Ensuring Reliance Upon Sound Economic Analysis in Department of Transportation Policies, Programs, and Activities. The links to all these are going to be in the slide deck. So if you want to look that up on our website, you have that access to it. Otherwise, they're not too difficult to find. But it provides principles to govern the implementation and administration of all DOT policies, programs, and activities. And I've got a couple slides here talking about some of the things that are highlighted in that order. So rigorous cost benefit requirements, making sure that we're supporting federal goals, not just local political objectives, adhering to Buy America requirements, to not be dependent on the DOT for future assistance for maintenance, and then some prioritization of goals. They like utilizing user pay models, direct funding to opportunity zones, prohibit funding recipients from imposing vaccine or mask mandates, require local cooperation with federal immigration enforcement. Next slide. There's also a pretty heavy theme in that US order centered around families. And it's worth calling out here. There was a lot of chatter among the planning community when this came out. The program needs to the DOT's directive is that transportation programs shall be administered to maximize benefits for families and communities. That includes economic opportunity, access to job, healthcare, recreation, et cetera. And then also mitigate the impacts of DOT programs on families and family-specific difficulties, such as accessibility of transportation to families and young children. And interestingly, preference to communities with marriage and birth rates that are higher than the national average.
What?
Nope, it's in black and white. It is linked in here.
Go back to that again.
It's right there. It's the final. I'm pretty sure. If anyone wants me to send it to them directly, I'm happy to do so, but. How do you promote birth rate?
Oh, I know.
Ask when they were speaking. Gotcha.
This is tied in the DOT.
Wow, Shelby, that's a big
The
reach.
USDOT.
Oh.
That's a
US.
Any chance we get a chance to pick on you, we're gonna do
I'll make sure Dayton starts.
It's been here once.
So when you're done looking at it, I'll briefly talk about the one case study that's been interesting for us is the build grant. As you all are aware, the MPO was helping the city of Windsor Heights update a raise grant application. And in the course of doing so, midstream 11th hour, the NOFO was revised, reverting the name to build, which is what it was during the first Trump administration. And what it really did was provide a very concrete example of the new administration's priorities being applied to federal transportation programs. And the net effect was the NOFO removed the previous administration's priorities related to equity and climate change and really reinforces the focus on economic factors. A telling example is the historical advantages, disadvantaged communities had a whole host of definitions under the previous NOFO. Those were all struck and basically simplified the definition to be any areas of persistent. And I will just note that we were able to successfully update that grant application to the new NOFO prior to submission. Next. So this is where staff sees things right now on the few federal transportation programs. We're thinking our core programs like surface transportation block grants and TAP. Those are likely to align with priorities. We're not anticipating any immediate changes. Build, we've seen changes so already. Potentially, we could see more changes next cycle. The two that we have more questions are about the discretionary grant programs like Safe Streets for All and the carbon reduction funding. I think there's probably a better probability that Safe Streets for All comes through in some format similar to the changes we saw with Build. But the carbon reduction funding, that one is clearly out of alignment with the new administration's priorities. And so we're in a wait and see position on that. As you are all aware, we made awards from carbon reduction funding. And it's possible that we would need to retract those and figure that out. And this is where I like to pause and make a very awkward transition to Tony, who has been fielding all sorts of conversations.
It's good to see everybody. I want to start with thanking Library City staff who have worked very hard to communicate with us in the last couple of weeks. They've done an excellent job. I know we recently just sent a letter to the Department of Commerce as well regarding the special census items, and a number of cities have reached out since then to be added to our second round of letters regarding that topic. And so just want to say thanks. From the bottom of my heart, it's made it much easier for me to do my job. Moving forward with all this, it's certainly confusing. We don't have to get in too much in the technical stuff because I did that this morning. So let's talk about the big picture here. From our understanding, if the contract was signed, they're going to follow through. That's kind of how we've been interpreting everything that's come across. But here's what we can do, provide clarity. Like for the carbon reduction funding, I was talking to our friends from Pleasant Hill, same situation. Are we going to be able to send this? Are we not? Let us do our part and send a letter to the administration and ask point blank, we need in writing what's going to happen. We need a larger degree of certainty. We don't want this to be just like the census where it's, over $3.5 million of municipal funds that are now tied up and possibly going nowhere. So that's what we want to do for you guys. We want to be a partner to you. We want to make sure we are getting answers in writing so we can move forward. We agree with the Moines MPO that a lot of the Department of Transportation programs will likely remain the same. But regardless, we need answers. And so that's something we're working very hard to get, as well as we want to make sure we are doing our best to make sure you guys have a good relationship with the new Department of Transportation, because we believe that's what is going to lead to the greatest amount of success in the Des Moines metro area. I know a lot of you have my cell phone number already, but if you don't, it is 515-509-9727. If there are any issues with the federal government going forward, please reach out. If there are things that you think we need to be paying attention to, we want to be able to do that for you. We want to continue supporting a lot of the projects you guys have brought to our attention over the last 2 years, whether that's renovating for hotels or water treatment project or even school lunches, things you guys have taken the time to talk to us about. We want to continue to support those items because you folks are the ones doing the actual work, and we're kind of just suggesting to bureaucrats to write checks. So please let us know what more we can do to help. On another note, community project funding. Last year's round of appropriations have not gone through yet. We are hoping they wrap up in March. We understand the amount of uncertainty that came last year with every congressional district kind of doing their own thing and saying due dates this, due dates that. So we're going to use the same model we did last time. We're going to keep an open window. We're encouraging everyone to send us the projects they have or are considering now. We will do our best to assist you guys with, making the best applications possible. And then when we do figure out what that new guideline looks like from the appropriations chair, that way we can just flag what we believe needs to be changed in the applications rather than giving you a phone call saying, hey, you've got a week, let's go. So we want to make sure that we're giving you guys the greatest amount of runway that we can in order to, make not only you guys feel better about the process, but to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure Iowans have the best applications in front of the appropriations committee. We've got it. I think the average congressman gets 6 or 7 of their projects approved by appropriations. We've been scoring 13 and above for the last 2 years. We want to continue with that success. Are there any questions you guys have right off the bat? Anything more that we could be doing here locally? And heads up, I know Grimes isn't happy, but I did move to Des Moines proper, so I'm much closer to the office now.
Good job, Tony.
Knocked on my
On your door, right?
She did knock on my door, and it was very surprising on a Sunday morning. I was like, did I email something? So
Whatever to get them. I didn't even know where you lived. You just moved, right?
I had just moved, so she got me. All right.
Tracking
You gotta watch out for those congressional. They are trouble.
Now we know where they're at.
On behalf of the MPO and the staff and our membership, we thank you for Congressman's efforts and your communication and also the 13 plus projects. We appreciate all that. Please pass along to Congressman Nunn. We appreciate his leadership and appreciate personally he lives in Aiken. So thanks.
Not sure if you guys heard about that either, but
What's that?
everyone's moving around. I think Wes is staying in Bondurant though, so we'll have that. But yep, please reach out. If there's anything you guys think we should be doing, please let us know. If there's anything we can get in writing from these federal agencies, please let us know. It's been a bit hectic at the office. I think we're getting over 100 phone calls every evening to wake up to in the morning, but call my cell number. You can reach me day or night.
Thank you.
That first round of carbon reduction, was that funded or was it never funded as well? So that's still a limbo?
It was awarded, and you recall that part of that was a strategic decision to award it because it would be harder to pull it back.
Right.
We're in a wait and see position. We have a lot to learn on that.
So we funded that.
Yeah.
Okay. And I heard that there might be some concern regarding the state RISE funds. Anybody else heard that? Okay, thank you.
Moving on, our fiscal year 2026 unified planning work program is strategic planning.
This is just a quick reminder that we are under development of the UPWP and budget. And I think the piece that we would ask is if your communities have thoughts on projects or services that you'd like the MPO providing to you as our members, please speak up. We have put this appeal to tech this morning, put it to you again today. And then the other thing I'll recall, next slide, is that we are doing a strategic framework this year. And we did ask everyone to fill out SWOT analyses, and we had some success with that. If you would give me the next slide, kindly. letting you know that we did receive 15 responses. This is efficient enough to draw some broad themes, and we'll bring things back to you later in the month. Those will be analyzed by Cass sent to the top, and then the strategic planning committee is meeting on February 14th. I know I went over that quickly, but I think we've all heard prior. Is there any thoughts or questions? Please.
Moving on, our informational items and 5 items here. If anybody any questions about, now's your time. Otherwise, the other reports are in the packet. Hearing anything? Moving on to other non-action items of interest to committee. I don't think do we have any? I have one. We've been asking for volunteers on committees, and in light of gleefully accepting volunteers, I've been made aware that the STBG subcommittee is somewhat out of balance as far as a sub area. So I'm going to be looking into a solution for that. I've got a couple staff and I visited. We've got a couple different things, but it's likely the STBG committee may be growing in numbers to help balance. Again, we love volunteers. Part of gleefully accepting a volunteer is that we now have 3 reps in one sub area. So the concern is the west side getting a little too much representation, and I'm not.
Absolutely. I don't even know, but yeah.
It's funny that it's like I get like the STBG is like the Game of Thrones or Thunderdome. You know, no one wants to come off, but everybody wants to get on. So by adding to it, it'll never probably shrink unless we have some retirements.
Policy.
Is that or just kind of
Well, again, reminder, the policy committee, we've sent things back from the STBG, specifically Johnson. So the policy committee does make the decision. It isn't the STB. They make the recommendation and we make decisions. So, I thought about the idea of expanding by 1 and forcing an even number. But
balance around?
moving it from 9 to 10, then forcing it, like they have to come to a majority vote. So there'll be a 5-5. And I don't think there's really been gunners or ever been any history.
We never really had any divided votes.
It's usually just
It's always been a consensus.
right. So maybe we grow it by 1, grow it by 2. But again, the policy board makes the decision. So I'm aware of the concern. And as of a day or so ago, so working on a solution, talked to a couple of people, a couple of policy board members and stuff already, and just kind of bouncing some ideas off them. Aware of it, we'll make an adjustment. I think there's a committee meeting coming up here soon, but I don't think will impact anything. Again, with Bob's comment, it's not that contentious of a board. It's just that they have some money to divvy up and everybody wants to be on. Any questions about that? All right. Anything else?
I guess I do have the meeting dates up there.
Our next meeting.
Yeah, just letting you know, the STBG, we're preparing to go out to our public engagement next week, probably. And then the STBG funding subcommittee meetings are scheduled for the 12th and 25th. The presentations are being spread over 2 meetings due to the large number of them. There's 27 applications. We're trying to get 5 minutes apiece.
Anyone have any to add? We're adjourned. Thank you.